There's a conversation happening in whispers, in group chats, in bathrooms, at bars. A conversation about what genuinely terrifies women about men. Not the surface-level fears you'd expect, but the deep primal anxieties that shape every interaction, every relationship decision, every moment of vulnerability. Today we're going deep into female psychology to understand what really scares women about men, why these fears exist, and what both sexes need to understand about them. These aren't the fears that make headlines. This isn't about violence or assault, those are real but separate discussions. These are the subtle, psychological fears that most women carry but rarely articulate. The fears that sabotage relationships before they begin, that create walls where there should be bridges, that turn potential love into preemptive defense. Understanding these fears isn't just educational, it's essential for anyone trying to navigate modern relationships. The first and most fundamental fear, the fear of emotional unavailability disguised as strength. Women are terrified of falling for men who seem strong and confident, but are actually emotionally locked down. The man who never shows vulnerability, who treats emotions like weakness, who can't say, "I love you" without 3 drinks in him. This isn't about wanting weak men, it's about fearing men who confuse emotional constipation with masculinity. I counselled a woman who described it perfectly. He seemed so confident, so sure of himself. But 3 years in, I realised he wasn't strong, he was frozen. Every emotion except anger was off limits. I was living with a stranger who happened to share my bed. This fear stems from generations of women who've loved men who couldn't love them back, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how. The emotional unavailability fear is particularly terrifying because it often reveals itself after investment, after she's moved in, after the wedding, after the kids. The charming confidence that attracted her becomes the wall that destroys her. She realises she's not with a strong man. She's with a scared boy in a man's body who uses stoicism as armour against feeling anything real. The second fear that haunts women, the fear of being settled for. Every woman's nightmare is being the good enough choice, the safe option, the one he commits to because the one he wanted got away. This fear is why women obsess over ex-girlfriends, why they need constant reassurance. Why do you love me? Becomes a daily question. They're not being needy. They're terrified of being somebody's consolation prize. This fear is amplified by how men discuss relationships. Time to settle down. She's wife material. I'm ready to get serious. These phrases suggest decision more than desire, timing more than passion. Women hear these and wonder, am I who you want? Or just who's here when you're ready? Am I your choice or your compromise? I've watched this fear destroy relationships that could have been beautiful. Women sabotaging good situations because they can't shake the feeling that he's just going through the motions, that somewhere out there is the woman he really wanted and she's just the understudy who got the part because the star didn't show up. The third fear, and this one's brutal, the fear of masculine competence without emotional intelligence. Women are terrified of men who can build empires but can't understand feelings, who can fix everything except relationships, who can lead companies but can't lead conversations about emotions, the provider who can't nurture, the protector who can't comfort, the leader who can't listen. This creates a terrible paradox. Women are attracted to competent, capable men, but they're terrified those same men will treat the relationship like a business merger, efficient, logical, profitable, but emotionally barren. They want the oak tree but fear it won't bend. They want the rock but fear it won't be soft when needed. I knew a woman married to a Fortune 500 CEO, private jets, multiple homes, every luxury imaginable. She told me, I'd trade it all for one genuine conversation about feelings. He can negotiate billion-dollar deals but can't tell me why he seems sad. He can read market trends but can't read my emotional needs. I'm materially rich but emotionally starving. The fourth fear is more complex, the fear of being mentally and emotionally outgrown. Women are terrified that as men evolve, achieve and grow, they'll realise they can do better, that success will change his standards, that the woman who supported him at his lowest won't be good enough for him at his highest. This fear makes women suspicious of male ambition, not because they don't want successful partners, but because they fear success will change the equation. Every promotion becomes a threat. Every achievement becomes a step away. Every new social circle becomes competition. They're not trying to hold men back, they're terrified of being left behind. The fifth fear cuts deep. The fear of invisible labour never being seen or valued. Women are terrified of disappearing into relationships, of becoming the invisible infrastructure that keeps everything running while getting no recognition. The fear that their contributions will be taken for granted while his are celebrated. This isn't just about housework, it's about emotional labour. Remembering birthdays, maintaining social connections, managing family relationships. Mental labour, tracking everyone's schedules, needs, preferences. Women fear becoming the operating system everyone depends on but nobody notices until it crashes. I counselled a couple where the woman broke down crying, saying, "He thanks his assistant more than he thanks me. She gets flowers for keeping his calendar. I keep his entire life running and get treated like it's my job." The fear isn't about doing the work. It's about the work being invisible, expected, unappreciated. The sixth fear is particularly modern. The fear of competing with infinite digital options. Women are terrified that they're not competing with other women anymore. They're competing with every woman who ever existed on Instagram, porn sites, dating apps. The fear that no matter how good they are, there's always something better just to swipe away. This fear has created a generation of women who feel like they're perpetually auditioning for a role they already have. Every day is a performance because every day he has access to thousands of other options. The phone becomes the enemy. Social media becomes the threat. The internet becomes the other woman who never sleeps. The seventh fear reveals vulnerability, the fear of pregnancy and motherhood changing the dynamic. Women are terrified that having children will shift them from lover to mother in men's eyes, that their bodies will betray them, that exhaustion will make them less attractive, that the man who desired them will see them as just the mother of his children. This fear is why many women delay motherhood despite wanting children, not because they're selfish or career-obsessed, but because they've seen what happens. They've watched friends disappear into motherhood while husbands maintain their whole identities. They've seen desire die in delivery rooms. They've witnessed women become ghosts in their own homes. The eighth fear is about protection. The fear that when real crisis hits, he won't step up. Women are terrified of investing in men who will crumble under pressure, who will become another child to care for instead of a partner to lean on, who will add to the crisis instead of managing it. This isn't about wanting a superhero, it's about fearing that when life gets real, illness, job loss, family crisis, they'll be handling everything alone, while also managing his emotional breakdown. They fear being the strong one by default, because he never learned to handle real adversity. I've seen this fear validated too often. The woman gets cancer and has to comfort him about her diagnosis. The family faces financial crisis, and she has to manage his ego while fixing the problem. The child gets sick and she's caring for two children, the actual child and the grown man who can't cope. The ninth fear touches on modern complexity. The fear of not knowing his true intentions until it's too late. Women are terrified that men have become so good at saying what women want to hear that sincerity has become impossible to detect. That everyone knows the script now, the right words, the right timing, the right gestures, but none of it means anything. This fear has created hypervigilance, women analysing every word, every action, every pause for signs of deception. Not because they're crazy or paranoid, but because they've learned that words are cheap and many men will say anything to get what they want. The cost of trusting the wrong person has become so high that trusting anyone feels like Russian roulette. The 10th fear is about identity, the fear of losing themselves in relationships. Women are terrified of becoming absorbed into men's lives, of their own dreams becoming footnotes, of their identities dissolving into his wife or his girlfriend. The fear that loving someone means disappearing. This fear battles with the desire for connection. Women want deep intimacy but fear engulfment. They want to support his dreams but fear abandoning their own. They want to be partners but fear becoming accessories. It's the tightrope walk between connection and autonomy that terrifies them. The 11th fear reveals societal pressure, the fear of aging while men get distinguished. Women are terrified that their value has an expiration date while men's increases with time, that every year makes them less desirable while making him more established, that the clock is ticking on their worth while his is just getting started. This fear poisons relationships from the start. Women feeling pressure to lock things down before they expire, men sensing desperation and pulling back. The biological clock becomes a ticking bomb in every interaction. The age gap in Hollywood couples becomes a prophecy of their own replacement. The 12th fear is about past damage, the fear that his ex still owns emotional real estate. Women are terrified of competing with ghosts, of being compared to someone they've never met, of healing damage they didn't cause. The fear that he's not really available because part of him is still with her. This fear makes women forensic investigators of past relationships. Not from jealousy, but from survival. They need to know what they're up against. Is she the one who got away? The one who broke him? The standard he measures everyone against? Women fear being the rebound he commits to but never really loves. The 13th fear connects to modern lifestyle pressures, the fear of financial dependence versus independence. Women are caught in an impossible bind. Be independent and risk being seen as not needing him, thus disposable, or be dependent and risk being trapped if things go wrong. The fear that there's no winning financial position in modern relationships. This fear is compounded by changing economic realities. Women who out-earn partners fear emasculating them. Women who earn less fear being controlled. Women who don't work fear being seen as gold diggers. Women who work too much fear being seen as unfeminine. Every financial position carries relationship risk. I counselled a woman who made partner at her law firm and watched her marriage crumble. He said he wanted a successful woman, but my success made him feel small. He wanted me to achieve, but not more than him. He wanted me ambitious, but not too ambitious. There was this invisible ceiling I was supposed to hit but not break through. The 14th fear involves children from previous relationships. The fear of being the evil stepmother or never being prioritised. Women fear entering relationships where they'll always come second to his children, where they'll be expected to love children who might reject them, where they'll have all the responsibilities of motherhood with none of the authority or recognition. This fear extends to baby mothers who'll always be in the picture. Every exchange becomes a comparison. Every parenting decision becomes a battle. Every holiday becomes a negotiation. Women fear signing up for perpetual drama they didn't create and can't resolve. The 15th fear is about modern social dynamics, the fear of his friend group and their influence. Women are terrified of the bachelor friends who encourage cheating, the work colleagues who normalise affairs, the online communities that promote toxic behaviour. They fear the version of him that emerges with the boys, cruder, colder, more callous. This isn't just about bad influences, it's about competing worldviews, his friends saying you're whipped when he shows affection, his family saying she's changed you when he grows, his online spaces telling him he's a beta for committing. Women fear constantly battling against external voices telling him she's making him weak. The 16th fear involves sexual dynamics, the fear of being desired only physically or not at all. Women are trapped between being wanted only for sex and not being wanted sexually. The fear that he's only with her for physical access, or worse, that he's with her despite lack of attraction. Both scenarios are relationship death sentences. This creates impossible standards. Be sexy but not slutty. Be available but not easy. Be adventurous but not experienced. Be passionate but not demanding. Women fear that their sexual value is their only value, while simultaneously fearing that losing sexual value means losing everything. The 17th fear touches on modern technology, the fear of digital infidelity and emotional affairs. Women aren't just worried about physical cheating anymore. Now there's sexting, online emotional affairs, cam girls, OnlyFans, virtual relationships. The boundaries of cheating have become so blurred that women don't even know what they're guarding against. Every notification becomes suspect. Every late-night phone use becomes threatening. Every new app becomes a potential affair platform. Women fear that modern men can cheat without ever leaving the house, that infidelity has become so easy and accessible that resisting it requires superhuman discipline. Now let's talk about what creates these fears. First, lived experience. Most women have personal or vicarious experience with these fears manifesting. They've been settled for, emotionally starved, taken for granted, or they've watched friends, mothers, sisters go through it. These aren't theoretical fears, they're pattern recognition. Second, biological vulnerability. Pregnancy, childbirth and childcare create unavoidable vulnerability periods. Women know that choosing wrong doesn't just affect them, it affects potential children. The stakes are higher. The cost of a bad choice isn't just heartbreak, it's potential generational trauma. Third, cultural programming. Society simultaneously tells women they need men for completion, while warning them that men will destroy them. Romance novels promise Prince Charming. True crime podcasts remind them Prince Charming might kill them. The mixed messages create perpetual anxiety. Fourth, the modern dating landscape. Technology has created infinite options and zero accountability. Men can maintain multiple relationships simultaneously. Commitment has become optional. The old social structures that created security have dissolved, leaving women navigating chaos with no roadmap. Fifth, the collapse of traditional support systems. Extended families are scattered, communities are fragmented, religious institutions have lost influence. Women face these fears increasingly alone, without the village that once provided wisdom, warning, and backup plans. The isolation amplifies every fear. Here's what men need to understand about these fears. They're not personal attacks on you, they're not accusations. They're survival mechanisms developed through generations of female experience. When she seems paranoid, controlling, or needy, she's often just scared. Understanding the fear beneath the behavior changes everything. The woman who needs constant reassurance isn't necessarily insecure, she might be terrified of being settled for. The woman who seems controlling might be terrified of being blindsided. The woman who won't commit might be terrified of disappearing. Behavior that seems irrational makes perfect sense when you understand the fear driving it. For men watching this, these fears are your opportunity, not your obstacle. Every fear represents a chance to be different, to be better, to be the exception. When you understand what scares women, you understand how to create safety. And safety is the foundation of deep love. Show emotional availability while maintaining strength. Choose her obviously, not by default. Develop emotional intelligence alongside competence. Grow together, not apart. See and value invisible labor. Create security despite options. Maintain desire through changes. Step up in crisis. Be genuine, not performative. Support her identity, not absorb it. The practical steps for addressing these fears aren't complicated, but they require consistency. Acknowledge her contributions daily. Include her in your growth journey. Make your commitment visible to others. Handle your emotional processing. Maintain attraction through effort. Choose her repeatedly and obviously. For women watching, these fears are valid, but they can't run your life. Yes, these threats exist. Yes, caution is warranted. But paranoia prevents connection. Walls built too high keep out threats, but also love. The work is discerning real danger from perceived danger, actual red flags from trauma responses. Not every confident man is emotionally unavailable. Not every ambitious man will outgrow you. Not every struggle with emotion indicates incompetence. Sometimes fear whispers lies that sound like wisdom. Sometimes protection becomes prison. Sometimes the thing you fear most is the thing that isn't actually happening. The key is conscious awareness. Know your fears, understand their origins, recognize when they're protecting you versus controlling you. Fear is meant to be a counselor, not a dictator. It should inform your choices, not make them for you. Here's the deeper truth. These fears exist because the stakes are so high. Women aren't afraid of men they don't care about. These fears emerge when considering real intimacy, real vulnerability, real commitment. The fears are proportional to the potential, both for joy and for devastation. The ultimate fear underlying all others, the fear of choosing wrong and having to live with the consequences. Women know that choosing a partner affects every aspect of their lives: safety, finances, children, identity, future. One wrong choice can derail everything. That pressure creates all the other fears. But here's what both sexes need to understand. Perfect safety doesn't exist. Perfect certainty is impossible. At some point, love requires a leap of faith. The work isn't eliminating all risk, it's choosing worthy risks. It's finding someone whose character makes the leap less terrifying. The antidote to these fears isn't guarantees, it's consistency. When men consistently show emotional availability, consistent choice, consistent growth, consistent appreciation, consistent presence, the fears gradually quiet. Not because the risk disappears, but because evidence accumulates that this risk might be worth taking. For relationships to work in modern times, both sexes need radical honesty about these dynamics. Men need to understand that women's fears aren't crazy or manipulative, they're protective mechanisms. Women need to understand that not every man is the embodiment of their fears. The conversation needs to shift from blame to understanding, from women are paranoid to what created this paranoia, from men are dangerous to how do we identify actual danger, from gender war to gender understanding, from mutual fear to mutual respect. These fears aren't going away. They're evolutionary, cultural and experiential, but they can be managed, understood and navigated. The first step is acknowledging they exist. The second is understanding where they come from. The third is working together to create relationships where fears are addressed, not ignored. The strongest relationships aren't those without fear. They're those where fears are acknowledged and systematically addressed through consistent action, where women feel safe enough to voice fears without being dismissed, where men understand that addressing these fears isn't weakness but strength. Modern love requires modern understanding. The old scripts don't work because the world has changed. Women's fears have evolved with technology, with options, with awareness. Men who want successful relationships need to evolve their understanding accordingly. Stop seeing women's fears as obstacles to overcome or problems to solve. See them as information about what security looks like to her. Every fear tells you exactly how to love her better. Every anxiety shows you where to focus your consistency. The man who understands what scares women has incredible power. Not power over women, but power to create extraordinary relationships. When you know what causes fear, you know how to create safety. When you know what causes anxiety, you know how to create peace. And for women, your fears are valid, but don't let them become your prison. Use them as information, not verdicts. Let them inform your choices, not control them. The right man won't be perfect, but he'll be willing to understand and address your fears consistently. The future of relationships depends on this understanding. As the world becomes more complex, more digital, more uncertain, these fears will only intensify unless we develop new frameworks for addressing them. We need relationships that acknowledge modern fears while building ancient trust. Every woman reading this has felt these fears. Every man reading this has probably triggered them, knowingly or unknowingly. The question isn't whether these fears exist, it's what we do with them. Do we let them divide us further, or do we use them as bridges to deeper understanding? The ultimate truth about what scares women about men, it's not men themselves, but the potential for harm that intimacy creates. The closer you get, the more damage you can do. The more she loves, the more she fears. The paradox of love is that it requires vulnerability to the very things we fear most. But here's the beauty. When a man truly understands these fears and consistently addresses them, something magical happens. The feared becomes the trusted. The threat becomes the protector. The danger becomes the safety. The very person who could hurt her most becomes the one she trusts most. I want to hear from you. Women, which of these fears resonates most? What did I miss? Men, which fear surprised you? How can you address them better? Share your thoughts below, not to argue or blame, but to understand each other better. Because understanding is the first step toward healing the divide between us.